My friend, my members. Hey, thank you very much for supporting this channel. When you become a member and you support this channel, you were telling me that you approve, that you like the dream too. If you're trying to learn a little bit of music theory, this might be the place for you. I have a particular way of doing it. I use my hands. I talk about stuff that are basic foundations of music theory, like what is a scale, what are notes inside those, what are a family key, how to look at chord progressions having rhythm and pulse and pitch, and then how to put it into your own practice routine. That really is the crux of this biscuit. My name is Wago Howard. I teach music here in Hilo, Hawaii, Big Island. If you're ever in town, come by. Maybe say hello to the staff and crew over at Big Island Guitars. They are wonderful. A few of the teachers there here also teach. They work there as well. I do labor on the side, but I can tell you that my 3 days of doing music are my favorite days out of the week. Today, what we're going to be talking about is the idea of family chords through the eyes of the circle fifths. How to name chords and visualize them in a few different ways so your brain starts registering what these look like, feel like, and how to visualize them on fretboard instruments. Now, today I'm going to cover the guitar, the banjo, the mandolin, the ukulele, and then show you a little stuff on the piano and then give you an idea on how you could vocalize with your singing voice, no matter what that range is, and then how to practice the practice. It's going to be about an hour's worth. If you watch this in the future and you want to time stamp it, good on you. That's what I do when I get a chance. I go back and I watch these silly videos and see how I can become a more effective educator, as well as I have some of my peers review these and say, hey, stop doing that, or do this, or you're wrong, or try this. Ooh, that's cool. All feedback always helps. Here we go. One of the most important things we could do in the beginning is to define what the circle fifths is. It's a way to see family chords. Normally you put F up at the top. Today I'm going to be talking about how to visualize the chord of G major. Now, G major itself can be written like the C at noon, and then all other notes have their functionality from that point. We are simply just viewing our circle fifths through the eyes of G major or its relative minor, E minor. When we play G to D, D goes to A goes to E goes to B goes to F sharp goes to C sharp. These are the chords when we count in fives. Hence, this is called the circle fifths. I'm not going to do a whole video on the circle fifths because this has already been done on this channel. And you can just Google in your browser circle fifths. I'm sure there are enough videos. I'd love for you to watch mine. I'm animated. Haha. When we play G to D, G, A, B, C, D. When we say D to A, we must include the sharp that is in the key of G. When we do that, I'm not going to write these all out again because we've already done this. We would have an F sharp on the top line of the treble clef. That top sharp gives us G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Let's see if I'm anywhere close as far as the pitch. I should have mine. Oh, it was major a second off. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. When we're doing our circle of fifths, we're going to say D, E, F sharp, G, A. That's how we get to A. Then when we go to A, we know that there is an F sharp in there, but what's the sharp that's in the key of D? Oh, it's going to be our C. So A, we need to say D, E, F sharp, G, A. Well, in A, to get to E, we're going to say A, B, C sharp, D, E. E, F sharp. When we go here, what is the note that's in the key of A? It's G sharp. So we include all the sharps of the song as soon as we go around. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B. B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp. The reason why this is F sharp and not F, one, we already have an F. It has one flat, B flat. F sharp has one natural note. The only note in the key of F sharp that is not A sharp is the one note that's the flat in F. So when I teach my students, I'm like, how many notes are there in a scale? Blah, 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 blah. Take away whatever that is. Let's say we're playing in the key of D. D has two sharps. Take them away. How many flats does D flat have? 5. When we go this way, we can go with our flats and name them this way, or we can go sharps this way. 5 notes from C is G sharp. Well, G sharp's enharmonic equivalent is going to be A flat, G sharp. Just so happens D flat is C's, G flat is F's, C flat, F flat, B double flat, E double flat, A double flat. F would be G double flat. Or you could do E sharp, E sharp. C would be B sharp, or or D double flat. They all have a bunch of different names. This is what the circle allows you to do to realize enharmonic equivalencies. Notes that have same pitch, but have two different names. A flat, G sharp, same thing-a-ding-ding. In music, I have a lot of people that didn't understand every single note that's up here is a natural note. Whenever we sharpen or augment it, it goes up in pitch by a half step. And then whenever we flatten, it diminishes or goes down half step. These are core to what we're going to be doing today. We also have a double sharp, which sometimes amazes people, even that have been playing for years. And then we also have a double flat, written as such. This is what our 5 accidentals will look like. So today when we're doing this, if you start seeing that our C, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I did it backwards. My bad. My brain doesn't work. When we have our F, it then goes to our flats. We have our B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat. No sharps or flats, 1 flat, 2 flat, 3 flat, 4 flat, 5 flat, 6 flat, 7 flat. Some of these are easier to remember than others. So today, when we're talking about the key of G major, through the eyes of the circle, just visualizing it, the 2 chords on both sides of that G, they're going to be the majors. We're going to have in our key signature a 1, a 4, and a 5 right here. So our 1 chord is G, our 4 chord is C, and our 5 chord is D. Now let's talk about the minors. We've got a major second, which has a minor chord. We have a major third, which has a minor chord. And we have a major 6, which has a minor chord. Those are going to be the next 3. A, E, and B. A is going to be our A minor. E is going to be our relative minor, the 6. And B is going to be our major third, the B minor. These notes themselves, I'm going to give its notation. There's no need to put a triangle by these because I'm just simply playing triads. Flattening the third gives me this. And then if I wanted to play my last chord, it would be in order. Majors, minors, diminished. Ta-da! That's how you use circle fifths to understand these core structures. Our 7th being the diminished and representative by that sign. Minor sign, diminished sign, major sign. If you want, you can put them by, but that constitutes a little bit something different in jazz. Constitutes that you would start putting 7s. When we start talking about our chord signatures and chord structures, the best thing to do is to do 1 key signature at a time. Because I'm crazy, I don't feel like doing C major right now. Let's go to G major. What I want you to do, because C major for all technical purposes, it's a little bit easier to understand as it has no sharps and flats. When we start using the accidentals, you start putting notes here and there. If you were to do a key like C sharp, it might be a little weird. So we start off slower and easier. Having said that, slower and easier, let's ease right into the key of G major. The key of G major has a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a bears, a 6, a 7. Aforementioned, we've got a G, an A, B, a C, a D, an E, and then an F sharp diminished. These are the notes of the key of G major that we just saw in our circle of fifths. In order for us to process these, we would want to know that we've got our tonic or our root. These are just names we put. T for tonic, T-O-N-I-C, and then R for root. G is root, I am root. When we go to the A, this is our major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, and then major 7. There are no minor intervals in a major scale. The minor intervals are in between, like our G sharp A flat that we were calling enharmonics. These are the ones that go between. There's a minor second here. There's a minor second here. There is no minor second between the 3 and the 4. That's where our naturally occurring half step is. And then there is no whole step between our 7th and then our resolution to the octave, the octave note. G to G, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, do, do. They're the same. They just have a frequency bandwidth where 1 is oscillating at this, and then you have twice as many oscillations in that frequency or wavelength. When we're going through here, This is considered the interval of the major second, third. Everything is relatable from the one. So when we start drawing these, no matter what clef we use, the standard clefs that we generally use in music are the treble clef and bass clef. However, you can make a clef out of any note or any line for any instrument. There are, to my knowledge, I think there's 15 clefs. I've only really used like maybe 6 of them. When we do this, we're putting a measure here. I got a little OCD today, so I'm just going to get rid of my end caps. And I want to use this for 2 purposes. One, I want to show us what the treble clef looks like, and then I also want to put a double beam and turn this into the bass clef. Bass. So when we've got the bass clef, I'm not the best drawer either, so don't be scared of drawing. This is our bass clef. This is the F line. Since we're doing the key of G, I want to put my sharp on that F because that's the one note in the key of G that's going to be a sharp. When we play our treble clef, we're going to find the G line, which is the second line from the bottom, and then the top line of the clef in the treble clef would possess that F sharp now. These are 2 measures which are clearly defining what clef we're in. When we draw a single note, and a single note, and stack these in tertiary harmony, we are giving ourselves the G, the B, and the D. These 3 notes function together as being a major third between this. It's a dyad. You ever see me in this channel going like this nonsense? That's the 5th. 1 and 3. Well, here with the G, this interval is called a major third. Ta-da! If you were to play it as a minor, you would need to use the interval that is in between, thusly, less steps. All of this information can be found in this series, the member series, underneath something talking about how to spell chords. What are diatonic scales? What is a chromatic scale? It'll show you how to take a 1-3-5, as we aforementioned, and then take it and flatten the mediant, giving us a flat 3, 1 flat 3 5, opposed to a 1-3-5. Ta-da! When we do this, if we wanted to change the value of this chord, we would put an accidental before the note on the stave. When we do that, if I wanted to make this G major into a G minor, I would simply add a flat note before this middle note. However, it's not what I want to do right now, but that is the purpose of doing this today. This is what they would both look like. Since I could play a G anywhere, there are G's up and down this. There are ledger lines that go above and below these clefs. I'm simply going to put the G on the bottom line because if you count F, F, E, D, C, B, A, G. Again, stack these with tertiary harmony. We've got a 1 to 3, 3 to 5. Still a G, B, and a D. This is how you learn the notes on the clef. But the way you learn the clef is by comparing it where all the C's are. Once you could build a C, you could build a triad. Once you could build a C, you know where G is. Once you build a triad, you know where G is. If you compound chords together, those become our expression over on the piano. Here, what we're doing today is we're going to be talking about how to take the tonic. Actually, I'm going to displace it as the root. These also can be named with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I just chose to put them in Roman numerals because that's how I best see them and that's how I teach on this channel. When we're talking about doing the G major here, we are just going to call this for what it is. G, B, D. Now, what I would like to do is show you how to visualize this on the staff, which we just did. But to see this, what we want to do is be able to define that this is a perfect fifth. The distance between our G to D, the same distance that we are counting out on our circle fifths when we went from G to D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, in that same nature, if we were to take this and look at it through the eyes of the fretboard, let's just pick, how about the piano fingerboard? Maybe I could do a little shoot over here. When we take this and go G, B, D, if I find the middle C, going to the 2 black notes and diminishing a half step, no sharps and flats in the key of C. When we say C, D, E, F, G, it gives us a G. Well, if I put my thumb on any of these G's, we get a G note. G, skip a note, play the B, skip a note, play a note. This is what a G major sounds like. G, B, D. These are just moving it up different ranges. The bass clef is showing this G. The treble clef is showing this G. When we play these on our piano, the shape of our fingers are the same. As in the key of C major has no sharps and flats. And just a little background, when we visualize this on a piano, we would have all of our notes. We would have our C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E to F, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and then we've got our resolution, C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. If we wanted to put this through the eyes of G major, we would simply shift all these notes and visualize our fingerboard, or our piano board, right, as having the intervals and spaces that are charismatic of G major. So if this is our G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. What's our one sharp in the key of G? It's F. Get rid of this note, and what we have is G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D sharp. This is our E to F. Here's our F sharp. How we play our notes is important. How we play our scales is important. How we visualize the things while we are learning. The process of what I just did was a long walk. The first 20 minutes of this was just going through the correlation of what a 1-3-5 is. One of the things we talked about was how to not see it as a 1-flat 3-5. There is no B flat in here. If you can visualize vertically and horizontally, you start to get a greater appreciation for music as a whole. Music pedagogy is kind of like learning how to go, what was our G note again? Knowing the difference between those two notes and being able to sing them and play them and put it on a piano, a mandolin, a banjo, an ukulele, all sorts of instruments you might play, that's really how to practice the practice of practicing on some level. This is what I teach. It's the amalgamation into all different types of levels. So the thing that I think would behoove you is to see it not only as an example of what key you're in, and then your circle of fifths, but to see the scale, which is what we're doing right now, through the eyes of the diatonic. Well, the reason why it's called a diatonic scale, these two notes that made up the major third is called a major third. It's a dyad, or a harmony. That's why it's called a diatonic scale. When we start layering the fifth, it's just another note, which the next two notes also are dyads, but two dyads combined make a triad, or a chord. That's how music theory works. When we start adding notes, like let's say we added that seventh, it would change the tone of having a G to an F sharp. Still a dissonance, but combined with B and G and D, it turns it into something called a G dominant or a G7. Now, again, there are videos on this channel. If you type in Wago, W-A-G-O, and diatonic scale, something is bound to come up on the interwebs. If you type in the idea today that we're working on is how to see inversions on your fretboard, piano, ukulele, mandolin, banjo. We're going to try a couple different resources here. So our triad being spelt has a 1-3-5. 1-3-5. Boom. That's how we see a triad. When we want to see that we are moving this over, this chord that is represented by the 1 now is called a first inversion, onto which we get rid of the lowest note being the G, and the lowest note uses the third of the chord, the B. When we put the 1 up here, we achieve our first inversion. When we put this, we now have a 6-4 split, and our fifth of the chord is going to be there. So if we add our notes here on our stave, right, you can see how now we still have a triad. 1-3-5 is still present, but now we're using it as an inversion. Now, the aforementioned F up here would have been the 7th scale degree. This is the minor 7th. So if we had our F right here, we would have our 7. This still would be in an inversion, but we would be altering these notes to be playing what our 7th scale. We would still have a G chord, but now we would have an inversion that uses the 7th, or we have a different split on how these are, 7-2 or 7-3. Again, This video goes into a little detail on how to do this, but I have a video that talks about inversions solely. This video is talking about how to see these inversions through the eyes of just our 1, 3, 5, so you can build a foundation on your instrument of choice. I'm just showing you a bunch of instruments. The comparison analysis is, all instruments basically do the same functionality regardless of how they're tuned, in fifths and fourths. The Sanshin, tuned in perfect fourths there. It's a weird one. Love it. So this is how we see inversions. What we can do is we could keep this in mind that when we're playing a 1, a 1, 6, or a 1, 6, 4, we are playing a root position, a interval that has our third as the root, and then we have an interval that has the fifth as the root. This is the core foundation of building triads and seeing your inversions. Now, let's do it not on the piano. We've got our first example. We've got our second example. Let's go to a third example. Let's throw it up on up here so we can see it as, let's say, an ukulele. I have a student right now that's really accelerating with the pentatonics, and I want to make sure that I've got enough resources out there. Not that 14,000 videos on a website is too shabby, but more centralized. When we're playing the ukulele, if we can give ourselves 4 strings, again, not the greatest drawer. If we're going to give ourselves a nut, make it heavy, here's where our headstock would be. Here's our 2 notes. We have our G string, our C string, our E string, and our A string. Thusly, this is our G, this is our C, this is our E, and this is our A. When I put these bars across, these are called the metal frettings. There are many, 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 many metal frettings, but these are the ones I draw. It should go all the way up to the 12th fret. Let's see if I spaced it right. 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 4th fret, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. I kind of did. And then the 12th would be right here. Noise. When we're trying to talk about this, realize if we're playing certain institutions or certain combinations of these, jeez. Oh, it's okay. We have 1, 3, 5. Generally, I have 4 colors. How about this? We'll do black as being our 1, we'll do blue as being our 3, and then green as being our 5. Nice. So, G major. If we were to play our G, our B, and our D to get a 1, 3, 5, we've got our root, our 3rd, and our 5th. And then if we wanted to change these, we can take our root and put it right here. All right? Actually, I need that. Oh. I need you now. Where are my other magnets? How silly. Silly of me. Okay. I apologize. I'm not going to have like colors for the root. All right. Orange and black are the root. That's what we're doing. So we've got our E goes to F. E goes to F in between, then an F sharp. So E, F, F sharp, and then F sharp goes to G. Cool. Get rid of our E. I'm just going to put that one right there and call it a G. Nice. When we play our B is going to be the 3rd. G, actually I should write these the other way. You always want to write from the root up. Root, 3rd, 5th. So we've got our G, B, and D. And then we have our orange and our black as being these 2, right? When we play our B, we're going to put it on A sharp or B flat, B. A sharp or B flat, B. Boom. Done. And we don't have a C in here, so we're going to get rid of the C. C goes to C sharp, and then goes to D. C, C sharp, or D flat, and then D. Oh, excellent. Nice. This is what our G major on the ukulele fretboard looks like. When we take this triangle shape, G, B, D, and we realize all patterns and all shapes are corresponding to each different instrument. This will be a D on a guitar. If you play this shape on a banjo, on the middle strings, you get a diminished. So all these shapes will be reoccurring. Here's where the interesting part of the cage system comes in. I know that one of my chords is an F major, F and an A. The next note is going to line up on this fret where your tonic is, or your root, generally, your G. And then the other notes that will be the G, B, and the D that make another inversion, not the 1 chord, because look at this. Our lowest string is the C. Well, when we play a G, B, D, G, B, and a D, the lowest note in this G major chord is the 5th. So this, as we're seeing it right here, would be a 2nd inversion because it's leading off with its 5th. When we take this chord and we bar the entire thing, we have ourselves G. We're going to put up top our C and then move it over to play here. Our B is up and top. When we play this note right here, we have our D. And then if we put another 3rd here, we get a bar chord across the entire thing, and then we put out the F shape. Now this one is also this. Starting to look like chemistry, isn't it? When we do this, we've got a bar chord, which allows us to have this shape, and then it has this. So the 2 different shapes I'm looking at are, what is this little triangle thing-a-ding, and how is a bar chord with my F shape working? We're going to look at it too through the eyes of the ukulele. After here, the next thing I would do is to move this up and find my root. D, D sharp. E, well, E sharp is an F. F, F sharp. F sharp, G. All right, well, that's my root. D, E, F, F sharp, G. Okie dokie. Well, if we have a G, B, D, what are we looking for here? We're going to move our fingering all the way up, so we're utilizing a different chord. If we follow B to C, C to C sharp to D, we could put a D right here. We could also go G, G sharp, A sharp, or B flat, B. When we have these 2 notes, we would have a G, B, and a D. Well, moving this from our B, B, C, C sharp, D. Look how when we throw our 5th out there, and we throw our 3rd, well, let's just call it this. We got our roots there. This is our next chord. It has 1 finger up top, and then we bar these. Now, we have a G as the root. So this chord, when we play it, is going to be our G major in a root position. Having said that, we can keep this structure here and move this note, which is on a D, and go D, D sharp, E, flat, E, F, F sharp, G. When we do this, this is another grand way to play this G major. It's the same thing as here, but now we are playing these 3 dots, and rather than putting the note back here, we're putting it out here. These are all patterns that we're kind of looking for, and I know they kind of look like die on a dice. And then the next thing we can see is this is what we would call our D major shape. If you play a D major down here and move it forward, you're using the cage system to see your intervals. C, A, G, E, and D, regardless if you're playing them as a minor or a major. These notes allow you to visualize your fretboard through the eyes of your major triad or your minor triad. Lastly, when we go to the 10th fret where this is, we can take our B, B to C, C to C sharp to D, and put it right there. We can move our G from right here, G to G sharp, A flat, A sharp, B flat, B, boom. And then when we move this note from being our, as we move it all the way up, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, again, 1, 3, 5, D, D sharp, E flat, E, F sharp, G. So when we go from our F sharp here to our 12th fret, we have our octave G. When we play this chord, this looks like an A major, and it moves forward to give us this. So, through the eyes of the ukulele, today what we've done is we've been able to express what our cage system is, how to see our intervals, and then to see that now this note, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, is now our third is on the root. Well, this gives us our first inversion. Our first inversion looks like this, and from the cage system it's using the A major shape. Cage system for the root uses the D shape. Cage system for the second inversion uses the G major shape. G major, D major, A major. Moves it around the fretboard. There are other orders we could do this for, but after you remove all this and you realize what your root, your third, and your fifth can possibly be, we realize that we find ourselves being able to play G, B, and D all along this fingerboard or fretboard. When we play G, B, or D, the only one that's in that in the open is here. We have our perfect primes here. These notes are the exact same pitch. They're the wavelength when you play them. G and G, perfect prime. Therefore, B and B, perfect prime. D and D, perfect prime. When we do this, this is a fifth. Fifth. Fifth above, fourth below. Fifth above, fourth below. These intervals are what we spoke about while we were looking at it on the staff. So for today, what your takeaway is, how do you define your root or your one? How do you define your three? And how do you define your five? In the key of G major, we have a G, B, and D. Learning the fretboard isn't too terribly hard when you start to view it through eyes of increments. Notice how we have the dots down here. As soon as we laid out this chord, the finger could have gone up to the D. That D now becomes where our position is. Here's where our chords end. The next note we can move it to is here. This is where our next grouping becomes. And now you can start seeing your fretboard in 3 different quadrants. The reason why I teach to play spider exercises, doing 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger, 4, and moving up in these 4, and then these, and then these. If you were to play at the 5th fret and do 1, 2, 3, 4 with your fingers, and then do 1 finger below for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have all of the frettings you will ever need to play all of the scales. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. D major. Want to play a minor? D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, D. You can move forward or backwards from here. That also is another video lesson that I've done out there. But today, what we're simply talking about is if you can see these, moving this, right? What's our next step? G to G sharp to A goes to A sharp to B. Well, if we went up and we kept going, our frets would make these. G, G sharp, A sharp, B flat, B. So at the 14th fret, you'd have a B. When you do this, you've got your 15th fret, you'd have your G, 13th to be here. And what you're visualizing is it starts over at the 12th fret, right here. So this is how you would draw out your fingerboard, your fretboard, playing in the middle of these frets, not on the metal fretting, and then seeing your spaces. The next thing I would do, you know what, I am going to do this. I'm going to go to my cabinet, and I'm going to grab my other color markers. Guess let me give a shout out. One of my students bought me these markers. Thank you again. Hey, actually these would be good to show the 135 rather than using the magnets, but I like writing in the black. All these colors get a little bit, a little much for me. I already opened this. How did I get one out? Yeah. All right, so I'm just gonna fill in the other notes. How about green? Green is weird, pleasing. So G goes to G sharp or A flat. How's that for your eyes? Oh, that's garbage. How about red? What a piece of work. Oh, it's like pink? Yuck, we're gonna do blue. Hey, blue, folks. We're doing blue. So this one is G sharp or A flat. This is going to be A. This is A sharp or B flat. This is going to be B sharp or C natural. This is going to be C sharp or D flat. This is going to be D sharp or E flat. This is E natural. This is E sharp or F natural. This is F sharp or G flat. This is G natural. We could also call these like A double flat. This would be F sharp. Nah, we wouldn't call that. This would be E double flat, stuff like that. So G sharp, A flat, A sharp, B flat, B, so on and so forth. Does that make sense? I do hope it does. And then A would go on that. We don't have to keep going there, but this would be A sharp, and B flat. This is what writing out your each line would look like to be more familiarized. But when you see all these letters going around, you start to get more of an appreciation. All of them are kind of the same. So once you get the groove of doing this, you start to feel it everywhere. D flat, D sharp, E flat. This is our E sharp or F natural, F sharp, G flat, G sharp, or A flat, and then A. Don't have to do past the 12th, it just starts repeating. E goes to E sharp or F natural, F sharp right here, or G flat, G sharp, A flat, A natural, A sharp, or B flat. B sharp is a C natural, faux show, C sharp, or a D flat. When we do a D sharp or an E flat, we're getting awfully close to our E, and then that is our 12th fret. We done. And then the most important line, I think, is the thickest string, and it really determines what your intervals are. I hope that was apparent through the whole idea here. C sharp is a D flat. They're enharmonic equivalencies. Remember that circle fifths helps us to visualize this. When we do like an E sharp, it's awfully good to know that E sharp is F natural, and that F goes to an F goes to an F sharp or a G flat. G sharp to an A flat, and then we're going to an A sharp, or a B flat, and then B, and then lastly our C. This is how you write down every single letter for every single fret, giving it a chromatic scale. Diatonic scale has all of the notes. G. Our minor second is G sharp or A flat, as we just wrote. Here's a G sharp or A flat. So when you play an open G, you can know that it goes a minor second, major second, minor third, major third. When we go here to C, this is our perfect fourth, augmented fourth, perfect fifth, augmented fifth, sixth, major sixth. This is our augmented sixth or minor seven. This is our major seven. Then when we augment it, we get our chord structures. A sharp, B flat. This is our minor third. There is no space between 3 and 4. We've got an augmented fourth, which is a C sharp or a D flat. So it's called an augmented fourth or a flat 5. Our 5 is called an augmented fifth, or it's called a minor 6, which is going to be our E flat or D sharp. When we do our E sharp is an F natural. This is what we call our minor 7th, and then or our augmented 6th. And then when we go to our last chord is called our major 7, and then our last resolution is called a P8, which goes back to our G. This is how to look at your fretboard on your ukulele. Next week, we're going to compare the ukulele to the guitar. When we compare the ukulele to the guitar, for anybody who's been looking to make the switch vice versa, if you've been playing ukulele and you enjoyed this and you want to start playing guitar, this next video is going to be the one for you. It simply adds 2 strings here. Now, a baritone guitar would be the same as a 6-string guitar, right? Except you'd have the 4 strings, charismatic of the 4 strings of our acoustic. Our acoustic has the E and A as the bass strings. Well, then it has a D, G, B, and E. Well, D, G, B, and E is this. It's just right here. Do you see how the ukulele at the 7th fret is the high compound octave of the guitar? When we take a capo and put the capo over here on our on our 5th, 7th, we get ourselves a C. Because the note that we play when we put our capo on the 5th, we get a C flat here, or a C. And that gives us our ukulele chord. Hope that made sense. Now, I'm just going to pop over here and show you what these chords look like so you could have more of a visual reference for your brain, which is wonderful. And you know, is there a way to kind of reference this so it's not, I don't know. I'll just try and make it squished over here. No. Not great. I will figure out how to use this video eventually. Oh, I can't do that though. Use your memory. You'll be fine. Let's see here. If I press this and do this and I transform and I press stuff to fit screen. There it is. Hey. Alright. This is my ukulele. This is an Islander. I enjoy it. It has electronics so I can play it out. I always kill the batteries. It's my biggest pet peeve as a musician, going through batteries. So when we know how to play a G major, as we just talked about, we are looking at this triangle shape. It has D as our lowest note. As I aforementioned, these are our perfect primes. If they're in tune with each other, the G will sound in tune. This is our third. This is our fifth. This G major is in a secondary inversion. When we see this is on this chord and we bar this, move a finger here, and throw out what looks like our F major shape, simply utilizing a secondary finger, we can move that up a major second or 2 minor seconds. And when we bar, B-A-R-R-E, we get ourselves a G major bar chord. You know, what's the difference? You can play G major here, throw that pinky over the top. It's a bit of a stretch. However, we most definitely can play like our F chord. There we are. When we take this G major, sometimes you can use this right here and put your fingers up here. Remember, this is your D. So we've got our D, our G, our B, and our G. It's another great way to play our G major. We can take that, because the notes are in there, and move this note and chordage up. When we play our first finger on the D, skip the 6th fret completely and play what looks like our D major chord. Some people play our D like this. That's fine. You can do that. I prefer to play with one finger. We have our D, we've got our B, we have our G, and our perfect prime. Our B's, remember. Not our B's, our D's, remember. I need to remember. When we take this and we take our chord of the G major and we move this up, we find ourselves moving over and utilizing the same fret, but we move this note to right here. Hence, I just play the same bar and then throw out my pinky up top, and I have now a G major, but it's centered at the 7th fret, utilizing the G as the lowest note. When we play this, we are in a root position G major, as G is the lowest note. After doing this, we can take our pinky right here, bar both of these, and play what looks like an A major shape, giving us our top G note. We've got a 5th from there. It's a 4th below, right? G to D, 4th below. And then we've got our major 3rd and our 5th. And then we've got another G, root to 3rd. If we flattened it, we'd have a minor, right? But this is our major. And then when we move this up, having these two notes, we could hold our highest note up top here. And this note repeats itself as it was down here, being our G major. Hence, you could go from one portion to the other. How do you practice the practice of practice, and what is the application of this? Most of the time I try to show students that if we're playing a rhythm, like a C, and we go to a G, and maybe that's the end of the song, a great way to get familiar with your inversions is just start ending your songs on a different inversion. So if you're doing clouds in the time, I love rainbows and butterflies and Tuesdays, and I love you. Your C, you can end on another type of C, utilizing one of your other shapes that you've been practicing. When we visualize our fretboard for the G, maybe we could end it on this G. So if we were playing ending a song on a different inversion gives the listener a little different feeling. And then learning the notes in the fretboard allows you to move from one G major utilizing the different notes in the key of G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. When we use all the chords in G major, and we start seeing that our chords just move shape, all of these inversions start to make a little bit more sense. If we played our G and went up to a C, we would see how our C major is extremely close to our G7 or our G major. Why? We're working within a quadrant. The biggest takeaway from here is go slow, have fun with the GBD this week. Next week, we're going to do a review on how the ukulele looks almost exactly like our guitar. And we're going to spend a little time doing the same thing on the fretboard so you can see the comparison analysis to both of these instruments and how you can make the change from one to the other. My name's Wago Howard. If you dig it, subscribe, put something cool in the comment section, and we'll see you for our next adventure in music. Aloha to you.